Hi there, it's Heather. This is my process of making some watercolour cards, which I've turned into some printables for Christmas. So if you want to do this, you'll need some paint and brushes and water, some card or paper to paint on, card blanks, envelopes, the usual stuff, some circle stencils, and a pencil. So this is the setup that I had. I've got some gorgeous little iridescent paints there and also some basic watercolours. I picked my card blanks and then used some all media paper, which I cut to size to go on the front of a couple of the cards. And what I did was just measured it using the card blanks that I had and made it the approximate sizes. The idea of painting these was so that I could add them into a digital platform, Canva, and then alter them and then use them multiple times to make some Christmas cards. It's really easy. The cards that I made were just using really simple shapes, and I only did 3 in the end. But you could, if you got moving on it, you could make quite a few. Now, my suggestion is when you're doing anything with watercolour, do swatches first. I didn't actually use these colours in the end because I used the little iridescent pots that you can see there on the left hand side, but I quite like these colours together, so I probably will use these ones, and it just helps for you to see them together. So what I did was swatch them out, and I'll be using the swatches as well, but I swatched them out so I'd got sort of the deeper colours, but then I watered them down a lot because I wanted the colours that I used in some of the cases to be very watered down. So that's why I'm doing this. But you can see the gorgeous little swatches, and I will be using those in a project as well. So I just thought I'd show you that process. And I wanted to do some greens and a lovely greeny blue in there as well. They just look so pretty together. I love swatches. So these are just the regular watercolours that I'm using. You don't have to use anything special. I'm sure everybody's got a set of watercolours at home that they can use for this. Alternatively, I suppose you could use watercolour pencils or even markers. I don't tend to use markers myself, but I'm sure that you'd get a good effect with those if you did. So I got those colours, and I also used a nice little pastel set there as well. So I drew some simple shapes. Now I did use a template for this, so this is one that I've got in my stash. I don't use them very often, but I just think if you're doing anything where you want a precise shape, it's a lot easier to have a pencil line there to help you out. So I just drew 3 shapes using the stencil, and these are supposed to represent baubles. And then that gives me a nice clear shape to work in. So the next step is to add some water to the inside of the shapes that you've drawn, and that then just stops any of your watercolour, when you add your watercolour, from sort of going beyond that line, and also it helps to sort of dilute the paint, and it helps the spread of the paint. So you can see here I did actually do all of those circles. I've just cut this a little bit short, but sometimes you have to sort of add a little bit more water on as you're going. So I wanted it to be quite light, and I just built up a layer of watercolour in the colours that I was using. I'll just add a little bit more water there, and then going in with a gorgeous purple. And you can't really appreciate the colours of these on screen. It doesn't really pick it up. I try to show it later on, but there's a lovely sort of mica powder in these. I think these are Cosmic Shimmer paints. I can't remember the exact name of them, but they have definitely got some mica powder in them. So they've got a lovely iridescent glow to them when they're on the paper. I didn't mix the colours for these. I literally used them straight out of the pot. To be honest with you, I probably wouldn't have picked these colours generally in painting, but I just wanted the iridescent glow. So I picked the lovely yellow, golden yellow, to go with this. So the trick is to let it dry completely, and then add the background in afterwards. Now I didn't add a background to the other ones that I do. You'll see later on I literally just coloured the shape and I left the background white. But with this particular one I did add a coloured background, and I chose the lovely green from the set to add to this. And what I wanted to do was sort of make it a little bit lighter in the middle part. So what I did was add the paint sort of to the outer edges. So I'd sort of added more paint to the outer bits, and then when I'd finished doing that I sort of pulled it inwards so that it was lighter when it was closer to the baubles, just to sort of give that lighter glow around the baubles. I really like this colour, but as it happens, when I use it for the when I use it on the digital altering, I actually remove the background completely, so you only see the baubles themselves. And then I did add, I tried adding a couple of different types of background to the baubles when I do it on Canva. It actually gives such a lovely effect because it's got that iridescent paint in it as well. It's really lovely close up. And the paint moves quite nicely when you add a bit of water. It reactivates really well. So I was just moving the paint around and getting a bit of spread around the circle shapes. It's very relaxing doing this. I did cut out quite a lot of the preparation and whatnot. This is just to give you an idea of what I did. But it's incredibly relaxing. I highly recommend getting your watercolours out and having a bit of a go. And it's really nice. You can build up quite a few cards. If you've got a bit of time, you can sort of mass make this type of card. So you've got quite a few. So it works for something like Christmas, because often we'll send quite a lot of cards for Christmas, so it's quite nice to have a few on the go. I don't personally send many Christmas cards myself. I always get my husband to write them out because I'm too lazy. I don't like writing them. I don't know, how do you feel about that? Do you send a lot of cards at Christmas? That gives a sort of a lovely sort of spiky effect. I was sort of going for like almost, not pine needles, but just that general look of sort of scratchiness almost in the background. So leaving that to dry then, I then wanted to go in with a little bit of detail. So I wanted to add ink. Now you can use a gel pen for this, or a white chalk pen maybe. But I chose to use some fluid ink because I just happened to have some next to me. So I used a paintbrush and added some white ink just to add the details onto the baubles. I think adding white details onto any colour can look really, really nice because it really pops. You could, of course, if you wanted to, using watercolours, you could use masking fluid. So before you put the watercolour on, you could draw the design potentially in masking fluid, and then when the watercolour has gone on top, you can then rub that away. But I think it's a lot easier to do it this way. Probably even easier with a gel pen, to be honest. So once the white ink was dry, I just highlighted those details that I'd done using a very fine black fine liner, and that just helps the image to pop a little bit. This is actually really handy when you are putting it into a digital platform like Canva. When you're playing around with filters and things like that, it can really make the design stand out. So it's well worth doing. And it's, again, a very relaxing process to just draw around using the fine liner. I think it has a similar effect to when you are using freeform embroidery on the sewing machine and you get that lovely line going around shapes, which I really like. So I draw around each shape twice. And then just add a little bit of detail onto the little sparkles that I've added onto the baubles. It seems a little early to be making Christmas cards, doesn't it? But I'm sure that if you're watching this video, you are a crafter and have probably started your Christmas crafting already, because most crafters start in June, don't they? I'm probably quite late, as it's late October. So these do make lovely cards on their own, just as a topper. But the advantage of being able to use a platform like Canva is that you can make several of them in one go using the same design, but make it look very different. And you'll see at the end of the video the different little backgrounds I made using the same images. So this is the next one. I just used pastel colours for these baubles, and I didn't use a background for these. I kept it white. I'm using exactly the same technique, so just colouring in the bauble itself with watercolour paint, but first of all obviously I use the water, the plain water, and then that just keeps it within that sphere. And again, I'm just layering up a little bit of colour, but I'm keeping it nice and light because I didn't want it to be too vibrant. Then you can see that's the finished result. I added some white and then some black again, just like I did with the other one. And this was my Christmas trees. They are slightly wonky, I'll be honest. I didn't use a stencil for this. I literally just did it by hand. So if you want them to be a little bit more precise, then you could use a template or a stencil for your Christmas trees. But it's basically, I just drew some little triangles. I did exactly the same thing, just added the water and then the watercolours on top. Waited for it to dry, and then with these ones I didn't add the white ink because I'd added a little mottled effect using the watercolour, so I just added the black fine liner and just doodled on them. Again, a really relaxing process. So these are the finished watercolours, and these could easily just be added as a topper onto your cards. So just get your card blanks and then add them straight onto the front of a card. You could add some little gems on there, or a little bit of that sort of glitter type glue. If I could remember what it was called now, that would be helpful, but I can't. The stuff in the little bottles, can you remember what it's called? I have quite a lot of it, but I can't remember. Anyway, you could just stick those on the front and maybe just embellish on top and then add a sentiment. I did go ahead and make some sentiments, so I'll be using those as well. I'll show you those in a minute. And these are the resulting printables that I made using the watercolour images. So as you can see, I played around with them and sort of duplicated them, changed the backgrounds, changed the colours slightly. They look really cute. So these would make lovely backgrounds for scrapbooks or for card making or journals. and then I resized them and I made some card toppers using the same images, and you can see there that I've changed the background slightly for the baubles, changed the colours slightly as well. So I've got plenty to play with. They're the little Christmas trees, made it look slightly more vintagey. But it's lovely because you've got that hand-drawn, hand-painted look, but you can mass make them, which is brilliant when you're making something like Christmas cards, because obviously people do send quite a lot of Christmas cards out. So there you go, that's all the variety that I came up with. And you can easily just pop them straight onto a card and then add a sentiment, a little bit of ribbon, lace. I did think some little ribbon bows on top of those baubles would look nice. Maybe a little bit of glitter and that sort of thing. And I think I will be showing you in a minute the sentiment. So that's one of the smaller cards. I think they look so cute. I really like that with the sort of pinky background with those trees. I really like that. Yeah, these are the sentiments. So I just made these on Canva and printed them out, and you can see there that they all look slightly different colour, and it's all the same, but I printed them off in different settings on the printer, and I used 2 different printers, so you can see the difference you get when you use different settings and use different printers. It's never consistent, is it? Anyway, so there you go. So that's my bunch of Christmas cards that I'll be making shortly, and thanks very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and if you like, subscribe to my channel if you like to see videos on crafting. Take care, everybody. Bye.